Okay, hey everyone. I am from DSCI 560, and I am here with my friend Prajuna. So, first question, Prajuna, do you consent to be video audio recorded for this interview?
Yes.
Awesome. So, basically, we just want to know first off a little bit about you, what organization you were a part of at UF, and what your role was and what some of the tasks you had to do looked like.
Yeah, for sure. For 4 years of my college life at the University of Florida, I was part of an organization called Sigma Sigma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and it's mainly a South Asian exclusive, but it's basically like a sorority that allows for people to get to know each other in a more um, deeper level, and also whether it's like leadership opportunities, academic opportunities, just getting to know um, just various um, routes that people take in college, things like that. So it was a very inclusive environment. I was able to meet a lot of people that I still continue to talk to today. So it was definitely a very inclusive organization. And also, it helped me gain a lot of skills in event planning and communication skills, whether it was through like my role as event planning chair or later on in my or involvement in the organization, I was vice president of operations. So some things that were, I guess, important within these roles, whereas um, like you said, event planning was a very big thing. What I had to do was make a list of the different like activities that were going on within the semester prior to that semester happens. So we had to create a calendar, sort of like just like a very vague sort of calendar as to what the specific events were. We had specific requirements that we had to complete within that semester. So going in and filling out those calendar with tentative dates as to what that reflect the requirements that we had, and then also just if any conflicts arise with any of the members of the organization, asking them like whether we can move these specific events, the dates of the events and things like that. And then in terms of the event planning, sometimes or most of the time, like it's really just like a concrete sort of event that happens almost every semester. So in terms of planning, that checklist was already provided to me, given to me from like prior semesters, but because it's kind of the same thing that happens every semester with just little tweaks here and there to adjust to various factors that happen on campus or just like improving different aspects of the event. But mainly we had there was two different events that we had, internal events and then external events. So the
Mhm.
internal was obviously for the sisters, like whether that was like sisterhood events, things like that. And then we had like philanthropy events that was hosted to people, not just within our organization, but obviously to outside of people.
Mhm.
And then the external events can happen either on a smaller scale or a larger scale. So the smaller scale events was just within like people on campus, things like that. And then the larger scale, we would have like there was a local domestic violence shelter.
Mhm.
Going back, I guess a piece that I missed here was that our philanthropy was domestic violence awareness and prevention. So
Mhm.
there is a local domestic violence shelter in Gainesville, which is called Peaceful Path. So there was an event that we hosted along with them. So
Mhm.
things like that. We had events going on from like like smaller scales to larger scales, whether it was within our sisterhood and external. Um,
Mhm.
but I guess the main tasks that encapsulated with those roles was just inviting the certain people that needed to be at that event based off of the scope of the event, um,
Mhm.
sending out reminders to those specific people, asking when their availability was, and making sure the majority of people could attend that specific event.
Mhm.
And then in terms of those bigger scale events, I had to reach out to whether it was the venues or whether it was getting approval from the university. There were specific things that we had to reach out to
Mhm.
the Greek Life Council to ensure that we were following specific rules that had to be met within within those events.
Mhm.
So reaching out to those specific people and getting early approval prior to even when the semester starts, that was a big thing.
Mhm.
Um, and then coordination of things on the day. That was also a very big event,
Mm,
a very big aspect, especially as college students. We're always busy. We have obviously like Sig Sig, as important as it is, academics come first for us. So
mm,
ensuring that on the day, the event goes as expected. So we would
mm,
have the tasks assigned to different sisters. Although even if one person plans it, it was a team effort, obviously. So
mm,
we would have a document and a conversation beforehand as to what specific things had to happen on that day and who those tasks were delegated to.
mm,
So, coming up with that document and orchestrating that conversation beforehand was something that I had to do as well.
mm. Okay. So, okay, one question we had was how long do you think it takes to plan the internal external events? I know you said you kind of start at the beginning of the semester. Do you maybe have like a timeline in mind, or is it kind of just dependent on when things happen?
So the sisterhood events usually because that's just like 10 to 15 people, which is like the amount of people that are in our organization. It's a
Mm-hmm.
much smaller scale and prior to when the events I mean the semester starts or like the last meeting of the prior semester, we usually just take people's the members of the organization's input as to like what specific events they would like to see and
Mm-hmm.
when they're most available, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
just a ballpark as to like whether because obviously they would have their schedule for the next semester already in concrete. So we would just get together and ask like, okay, when is like the weekdays better for you, weekends better for you?
Mm-hmm.
What even just like what specific weeks? Because with given holidays, like for example, if it's the fall semester, obviously we have more holidays
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of the semester with like Thanksgiving, all of that good stuff. So sisterhood events, because we have that information beforehand, most of the planning is even completed prior, like in that specific meeting. Um, so prior to even the semester even ends, the prior semester ends, we would have something concrete for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to these external events that happen on a larger scale, especially with our philanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
those things, for example, if it's a fall semester, we would have our bigger events in the fall semester because we have that summer
Mm-hmm.
prior to plan. So it would take all summer for, there's a big event that we host every fall called our annual charity gala,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the bigger, larger scale events that I was saying that we collaborate with the local domestic violence shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So that we would take the entire summer to plan. And the reason for that is because one, delays in communication, obviously, because we're working with a third party organization. And so it may take them a week to reply, 2 weeks sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So because we want to have that sort of leeway to adjust for that delay in communication, we would take the entire summer to plan.
Mm-hmm. That makes
Um,
sense.
but all of our planning usually happens prior to the semester even starts,
Mm-hmm.
just because during the semester it gets really hectic and things fall through between the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
So so I guess to summarize, it would take about a summer and for the bigger events,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like for the planning, usually like a meeting or two.
Makes sense.
So a week, I guess. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so another question we had was, what are three time-consuming parts of the planning event that you faced as the event planning chair?
Do you mean like factors or like
Like maybe like what was super frustrating or what took up more of your time that maybe you had hoped for?
okay. One thing I can think of on the top of my head when you ask me this question is
Hmm.
communication.
Mm,
Whether it's receiving a response back from even within the internal events, like we have everyone present within that last meeting that I was telling you about in the semester. We
hmm.
ensure everyone is there, and so obviously I mean since everyone is in the room, communication is faster,
Hmm.
so those are like easier to do. But for example, when we're hosting an event that requires external parties, whether that's the university or the domestic violence shelter or other organizations on campus that we collaborate with, it
Hmm.
takes longer for them to reply to. And so sometimes we have blockers within our planning process because we
Hmm.
require a response from that third party. organization, whether it's to set a date in stone, or
Hmm.
whether it's to confirm a um, the menu that we have. For example, if those like larger scales, we provide a dinner, and so when working with a third party organization for our catering services, and they take a while to um, for example, give us a bill back as to how much that menu that we're looking for takes, and then we have to go back and like talk about that. So that takes a bit of time
Hmm.
from the planning process that we have to account for. So
Hmm.
basically, that communication from third party
Hmm.
organizations, and it happens obviously. Like we can't expect a response. If I reach out to someone today, I'm not gonna be able to expect a response from them tomorrow, just because it
Hmm.
takes a while. But that, I guess, some you could call it a frustrating part of it, or like something that is a time consuming process
Hmm.
in the event planning. And
Hmm.
then two more, I would say. Um,
Or if you don't have two more, it's also okay.
Okay. From the top, at least when it came to my sort of tasks, it wasn't
Hmm.
there wasn't too much of a time-consuming process, just because like we had our weekly meetings, and we like had a structure set in stone prior from previous semesters, and so we
Hmm.
would just reuse and recycle the planning processes that were done beforehand.
Hmm.
So there wasn't really anything other than just like the miscommunication, or not even the lack of
Hmm.
quick communication.
Hmm. That
That
makes
was,
sense.
yeah.
Ooh, I actually thought of a follow-up question. So when
Yeah.
you communicate with your third-party vendors, do you typically go through email or is it like iMessage or just a mix of those?
It's usually email. We don't like
Mhm.
to give out our personal phone numbers or anything like that, so it's
Right.
usually emails. But for example, if we do see a delay in communication, like for example, if it's at the university, then we would just visit the person that we want to in their office. We would
Hmm.
check. Usually they have like if it's like a Greek council person that we would like to meet, they usually have their office hours or something displayed on a public website. So we
Hmm.
would just be able to access when they're going to be in office and then meet them at their time.
Hmm.
But for example, if it's the Peaceful Paths individual the representative that we're coordinating with, we would
Hmm.
usually contact them through email. And then if not, then we would try to find other contacts, but mainly through email.
Mm.
Um, so I guess either email or in person.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to communicating with your attendees and guests, what do you do or how do you communicate them with them when there's like last minute changes? And then in general, just when you're trying to send out invitations and stuff, how do you get in touch with people?
Yeah, so for the attendees that come to our events, it's usually people within our organization or within the Greek life.
Hmm.
And so there's a huge group me um channel, or I
Hmm.
think it's channel,
Yeah.
that everyone is part of, and so it's just an easy quick text in that group me,
Hmm.
at least for the people that are within the Greek Life Council that we
Hmm.
invite. It's just a quick message, and usually people respond and reply and go through that.
Hmm.
We also have a Slack channel that is basically the same sort of thing. So we put that message in both of those channels. And then for the external people who are not in Greek life,
Hmm.
usually we would have their email contacts or their phone numbers.
Mm.
So we would be able to respond through, or reach out to them through that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So, do you think you spend a lot of time just reaching out to people, inviting them, answering questions, doing all that kind of stuff, especially in like a leadership role?
Yeah, for sure. It does take, especially because um, some like each of the attendees have like a sort of different priority, if that kind of makes sense. So for example,
Hmm.
like if I'm inviting like a professor to our event, obviously that would take, like, the invite has to be a little bit more personalized and a little bit more professional,
Hmm.
rather than if I were to go and invite like a student on campus. Like
Mm.
it wouldn't have the same exact professional tone. So depending on the I guess authority level of the attendee, we would have to personalize our invite to match that their, I don't know if authority is the right word, but I think
Hmm.
you kind of understand what I mean there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so basically it takes time to ensure that whether the email that we've written out to invite this person is well written and professional, or whether the text message that we've written it's not too informal, but it is to the point, and it's how we communicate with one another. So yeah, it does take a while to make sure that we have the invite according to their authority level.
Hmm. That makes sense. Okay, so when an event is over, especially an event at the scale of the gala, what are some of the things that keep you busy? Is it maybe like any payments that are left, thank you notes, photo sharing, anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. So one big thing that does take a while, especially at any post event,
Hmm.
except for the sisterhood events, the internal events, is
Hmm.
we like to post our like post event um thing on social media, whether that's on Instagram, on Facebook, and sometimes we have like a YouTube channel as well. So
Hmm.
whether it's a larger scale thing as gala, we have a photographer, and so they would have to edit the videos and photos and like make a professional post on our social media to do like a recap of that specific event, and so
Hmm.
that takes a lot of time. And
Hmm.
then also post event, we call it like our post event debrief meeting. And so that's where we sit down and we really lock in the details as to how much money we were able to obtain from that event, how much money it took to plan that event.
Hmm.
And just like we would have like various metrics that we like to analyze post event, how many people came. Look, we have expected numbers, and then we
Hmm.
would like to cross check that with the actual numbers. And
Hmm.
so we would have, and if there were any large discrepancies within those two numbers, we would sit down and analyze what happened. Why did we, for example, if there was a metric we didn't reach, we would ask ourselves what went wrong,
Hmm.
or if there was a metric that exceeded our expectations, we would analyze what we did right
Hmm.
and how we can leverage that in our next event.
Hmm.
So those post event metric analysis also takes a while, just
Hmm.
because we want to do it right away after the event ends, so we everything is fresh in our brain and we
Hmm.
can ensure we obtain all the details for our next event.
Hmm.
But obviously, on top of that, yes, we have like our payments, our thank you notes. We usually only send thank you notes. Like in that big group me, we'll put a little message in, thank you so much for attending, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
But we have that usually doesn't take too much time. But the thing in terms of thank you notes, the thing that takes a longer time is we usually send like postcards
Hmm.
to, whether it's to the university representative that attended our event, or the Peaceful Paths representative that attended our event, because
Hmm.
we want to send a more like personalized slash like something tangible, I guess.
Hmm.
Thank you note for attending that. So usually getting everyone's signatures and then putting that in the mail and then ensuring that they have received the postcard is something that also takes a while.
Hmm.
Um, but usually I would say like the most time consuming thing post event is analyzing our metrics and seeing what went right, what went wrong, what we can do for the next event, and how we can use the information that we've analyzed for the future.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
So I know before we started the recording, I did explain a little bit about what our project's about.
Right.
Um, do you think it's something that Greek life organizations would want to purchase? Do you think it would maybe be something that's helpful and they'd want to maybe invest money into it?
Yeah, for sure. I think the main features that you had explained to me sounded really useful in an app. I would like if there was like a centralized place where I could whether it was like inviting guests
Mhm.
or even keeping track of like the different tasks that had to be done,
Mhm.
especially like I said for those because our planning happens before the semester,
Hmm.
sometimes like let's say we're in the middle of semester and like things people like get people forget things that were planned out before the semester. So
Hmm.
having an application or having a centralized place where whatever we talked about in our last meeting was sort of reported and
Hmm.
like our next steps were reported as well,
Hmm.
and those tasks that we wanted that were delegated the day of, in an application that was accessible to everyone, that would really help in terms of planning. And then, like I said, that like post event metrics,
Hmm.
that it would, I feel like having an AI assistant analyzing, like, okay, so you had made X, Y, and Z amount, but you had projected X, Y, and Z amount. So, like, I feel like having AI sort of analyze that data like that and maybe
Hmm.
give us suggestions as to how we can improve or what went right. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like that would help us a lot. And those meetings would be more productive instead of just asking or having that data that AI analyzed would help us have a more productive meeting, because
Hmm.
rather than spending on the actual analysis, now we can have more conversations as to what we can do better, what like we can make more productive steps
Hmm.
instead of, not wasting, but spending more time analyzing the data. We would have
Hmm.
an AI assistant do that. So now
Hmm.
we would have more time to have more productive conversations.
Hmm.
So I feel like in that sort of aspect, an application would be really useful.
Thank you. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So the last question we had was we're going to list out some features we were thinking of building, but we weren't sure if they would be useful for our, I guess, target audience.
Okay.
If you could maybe pick some of the features that we're talking about and say if, like, yeah, that'd be cool, or no, maybe it's not as useful.
Okay.
So we were thinking of things like auto answering the FAQs for the guests, vendor reminders and updates so that you're not having to follow up as much, event scheduling and sharing, photo and video sharing and collection, guest engagement. So that could be things like polls, little surveys, things like that. And then also maybe help with like budget tracking and checklist tracking in that sense.
I would say the last one that you just mentioned, the budget tracking and the checklist one, I feel like is extremely useful,
Hmm.
especially having a centralized application where everyone can view each person's tasks
Hmm.
and when it has to be completed by.
Hmm.
And also for the finance chair, like having that budget tracking and seeing on a quick, like even on a daily basis, they can just quickly log into that application, just check where the money has been going. And
Hmm.
if there's any discrepancies, they can quickly address it.
Hmm.
I feel like having that last feature is really useful.
Hmm.
Another thing that you mentioned was really nice is the vendor reminders one, sending
Hmm.
reminders to the specific third-party organizations or vendors or even guests.
Hmm.
Um, I did have a quick question though, just for implementation purposes. So would this application, is this more of like an internal tool, or is it like, for example, like let's say I have a guest that is only coming to this one specific event, like they would have to purchase this application to receive those reminders? Is that how it is, or is this more of an internal tool?
So the way we're trying to design it now, only the host would have to pay for it. And we are trying to have like a free version where it could be used for like smaller events, like maybe your internal events. But then the paid version is for larger events at the scale of maybe the gala. And then
Okay.
we didn't think the guests would want to pay for something like this, especially if they're only attending one event, like didn't really make sense.
Right.
But if an organization like Sig is trying to host multiple events in the year, then maybe they'd want to consider paying by event or paying by a subscription model of some sort.
Okay, I
Yeah.
understand you. Okay. The reason I asked that is just because like I know as an attendee, like someone who's just attending one person, like or
Mhm.
one event, I keeping them in that specific or in the loop in that specific application, I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes it might be like either miscommunication or like the attendee might just not want to purchase a separate or not purchase, but even just get that specific application for that. So like there might be a little bit of a
Mhm.
discrepancy there, but
Yeah.
It
Oh,
depends
I
on the
get that.
user. That's a user sort of thing. That's not
Hmm.
something you can really control.
I get that entirely. Because something else we thought about too was the friction of like having to transition between different applications.
Yeah.
Especially like, you guys already use GroupMe. We had to ask ourselves like, why would someone want to download this other application when they could just communicate with the SigSig officials through GroupMe? So
Right.
we are trying to think through things like that.
Okay,
Um,
awesome. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then I think also the way we're building this is we're starting out with a web app and then from there building a mobile application as well.
Okay.
Probably in the thinking of like, if you're just attending one event, maybe you're only going to use the web app version. You don't want to download a whole thing. But if you're a host using this for multiple events, you'd want to have it centralized on your phone, just download the app and not have to go through the website all the time.
Okay, that
Um,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna suggest maybe like some this might be a little bit high level for something that you
Hmm.
guys are starting up, but maybe if the host was to obtain like the email of the attendee and then maybe have like a feature within your application where there's like an email listserv situation
Ooh. Hmm.
where all the people's emails or all the attendees' emails are inputted into that host's ability to send out email reminders or something like that. I don't
Hmm.
know if phone number or text messaging is, I'm not so sure how that would really
Hmm.
play out,
Hmm.
but because an email is just a public sort of that environment, I think a
Hmm.
little easier to implement.
Yeah. So we're still in the process of building, but one thing we were trying to do is have people log in with Google. So then by that, we would also have access to their emails.
Okay,
And
makes
then,
it a little for
yeah.
that.
And then I
Awesome.
think also, I don't quote me on this, but I think another thing that we're trying to do is build the user profile so that all of their like contact info is in that profile as well.
That profile makes sense.
Mhm. But I
Okay,
do like that idea of like having the host have access to like a list of the emails so that it's
right,
easier to just send a listserv or something like that.
exactly.
That is a really good suggestion.
Yeah, and I think even with that specific with the host ability,
Hmm.
maybe like you could have that sort of sorting feature where it's like if it's a specific because remember I was telling you like we have personalized thank you notes or personalized invites based off of like whether they're a professor rather than like a student
Hmm.
on campus, for example. So like you could instead of having to rewrite different event or different invites, sort of you can have like a template. So for
Hmm.
example, if the person was like a VIP or like you could like categorize it based off of however, and then you could
Hmm.
select a template. That would be a
Hmm.
pretty cool feature as well.
Hmm. And also another thing I was thinking about too is I know you said that you kind of inherit things from the previous board. I know we did that because I was in Girls Who Code. We did the same, inheriting like a
Yes.
Google Drive. I was also wondering maybe it would be helpful if we did something where all of those documents were in the app and like our AI
Right.
kind of knew a lot of that stuff already.
100%. Yeah,
Because
and I feel like even having an AI assistant go through that and ensuring, whether it's like summarizing it or whether it's asking specific details from,
hmm.
I know like ChatGPT has like the data analysis
Hmm.
like sector to it, and so
Hmm.
kind of using that
Yeah.
um model and yeah, there's a lot
Hmm.
of potential with this application and there's like so many things you could do with it.
Yeah.
But I think what you had mentioned, the beginning features are really
Hmm.
strong.
Hmm.
It'll definitely help out a lot with the planning process and will
Hmm.
that I could see it very profitable for organizations and they would like to purchase it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that summed up all of my questions. I wanted to thank you for your time and
Of
all
course.
of the details that you provided. I think that was probably one of the most helpful interviews you've done so far. Like, I'm not
Thank you so
kidding. Uh, but with that being said, I'm gonna hit end on this recording.